moving right along with the rest of the show and into right away the next topic. More receiver group rankings, this time in the AFC North. Very similar pattern and just structure of all these teams, except a couple of them and how I rank these receiver group rankings. Very similar how they're made up, what their strategy is. So without further ado, I will get into the first team, the fourth team ranked in my power rankings for the receiver groups. I have, unfortunately, the Pittsburgh Steelers. It has been great from this group, really, in recent seasons. Great that they got George Pickens there in the middle, really emerging as that wide receiver one for this team. And the rest really just remains a question mark at this moment for the Steelers. You sort of got an answer now at the quarterback position. You'd like to think, and you probably know that it is better than last year's group in Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Mitchell Trubisky. But now, who are they going to throw the ball to? They have some talent there, but the reputation aspect of my criteria on how I rank these groups, isn't really there just yet. You have George Pickens. I think most people know that or can project that he could be a very good wide receiver in the NFL. But then you got guys like Van Jefferson coming in, Quez Watkins coming in. They just drafted Roman Wilson there to your far right in this year's draft. You also have Calvin Austin III in his third year, not to mention Pat Freiermuth as well, not coming off of the best year in Matt Canada's offense. So how do the Steelers piece all of these weapons that they have together? Last year, George Pickens was the only wide receiver that passed the 1,000-yard mark on only 63 receptions and only 5 touchdowns, though. So decent yards, but you'd want the other numbers to go up as well to really contribute to this aspect of your offense. You lose Deontay Johnson, so who steps up now as that second best wide receiver? And also last year they had a running back, Jaylen Warren, be their third best receiver in terms of numbers, so you can't have that if you're going to be if I'm going to be trying to rank you higher than number 4, you can't have a running back be your third best receiver. So that also plays into it. And now you have a new system coming in. And on that topic, it seems like they're going to be a more run-heavy team, run-first team. So that also plays a factor in how the numbers sort of pan out, how involved do all these options that the Steelers have, really contribute to the overall season. That'll be something to follow. Hopefully you get George Pickens another 1,000-yard season to really utilize him and all of his abilities. Pat Freiermuth is another one. I did put him up on the screen just because Arthur Smith is known for using that tight end a lot, so maybe he could be in for one of his best years. You just don't know, and that's the biggest factor that really has the Steelers coming in at number 4 in the rankings. But at number 3, a little bit similar, the Baltimore Ravens, arguably the best team, one of the best teams in the entire conference, but their wide receiver group, I have some doubts about it. No 1,000-yard receivers last year. I know Mark Andrews missed some time. Isaiah Likely, who you see on your screen there to the left, didn't really become a factor until late in the season, really into the playoffs as well. And Zay Jones also on his first year. You can't really expect, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and nearly 100 receptions. That's not realistic, but he still played a good role, and I thought he grew very well and developed very well over the course of the season, and especially into the playoffs as well. But also, like the Steelers, maybe now they become a run-first team, even more so than they already were, because you have big number 22, Derrick Henry, in that backfield, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Does that take away from some of the looks that some of these guys get? Very talented options. Obviously, Mark Andrews, one of the best in the NFL. I just mentioned the potential Zay Flowers has, and also Isaiah Likely. Derrick Henry has proven it, has that reputation. Maybe you run it now even more so than you did last season, because that tandem of Lamar and Derrick Henry, as unstoppable as you can find in a duo in the NFL. So they're obviously going to have to use that more. Maybe the numbers won't show up next year so much for the Baltimore Ravens. And also, they have a good amount of versatility, because other than these three, you have Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar. All these guys, these 5 guys in your offense, do bring a little bit something different to the table, working in different parts of the field. And maybe you see a little bit more of 12 personnel this year with Derrick Henry, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews all on the field at the same time, with Zay Flowers and another wide receiver on the field. And you get a lot of different looks that way. Maybe it creates more opportunities for the wide receivers where you might not need a clear-cut number 1 receiver established in the NFL. this works and has been working so far for the Ravens, but I think in most comparisons and most decisions when teams are picking their wide receiver groups, I don't think the Ravens have enough talent, really established reputation among the guys that they have right now to be ranked any higher than number 3. So that means only 2 teams left. One of the Ohio teams, the Cleveland Browns, are number 2 on my list. Similarly to the last 2 teams, the depth really isn't too great, or more similar to the Baltimore Ravens. They have Amari Cooper, David Njoku, who stepped up greatly this year to really help out Joe Flacco and become one of his favorite targets. Then you also trade for Jerry Jeudy to upgrade the wide receiver 2 position to sort of help and complement Amari Cooper there. Other options that they have on their wide receiver chart, Elijah Moore, who they really like, and James Prochet. Another team that relies a lot on the running game, similar, like I mentioned, to the Steelers and Ravens. Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs in the league, coming off a pretty devastating knee injury that he suffered last year against the Steelers. So maybe now they change it up a little bit. You have Deshaun Watson now being reintegrated into the team. Maybe you become a little bit pass heavy more than you have in recent seasons with Nick Chubb there, Kareem Hunt also there. You don't want to overdo Nick Chubb again, maybe to get him hurt too much or for that fear of getting him hurt. So you have the options to do it. Maybe they decide to throw more this season. Amari Cooper, the only 1,000-yard receiver for them last year. Jerry Jeudy, I think the trial's still out on Jeudy. He was a first-round receiver, came in with a lot of hype, but just really didn't pan out in Denver. There was a lot of off-the-field stuff that happened with him. Didn't perform too great on the field as well. And also the Denver Broncos weren't the sanest, weren't the most prosperous of situations for any wide receiver or anybody on that team. So now he gets a new beginning. Has a good opportunity now to really emerge as a very good number 2 because he is still very young. I don't think that talent just disappears or just goes away once he was in the NFL. I think it's still there to be tapped into, so hopefully for the Browns, he taps into that this year. And then David Njoku, one of the best seasons of his career last year, really emerging into a good young tight end, but I need to see more out of him. Can he build on that? And also, similar to Jerry Jeudy, I need to see it consistently over a couple of years. But number 2 on this list, they have the talent to do so, and maybe the most potential out of the last 2 teams to get it done with the amount of talent that they have. So at number 1, obviously the last Ohio and team in this division, the Cincinnati Bengals. 2 number 1 wide receivers just edges them out, I think, in these power rankings, for me at least. The depth, again, isn't really there compared to the Steelers and the Ravens, where the Steelers have 5 guys that I named when I was talking about them. The Ravens also have 5 guys that I've named when going through their explanation. And then you go to the Browns and the Bengals, obviously now. You have really the 3 main guys for the Browns, in Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku. And these 3 guys here for the Cincinnati Bengals. More so quality over quantity compared to the Steelers and Ravens, where they have more quality, but maybe they have more quantity. Excuse me, I always get those confused. They have more quantity, but the quality might be not there just yet, or it's still not tapped into for the Steelers and the Ravens. These guys are more proven. Jamar Chase, one of the best receivers in the NFL. T. Higgins, just about to make that jump. He has had a couple of impressive seasons. This last year he dealt with injuries. Joe Burrow got hurt, so it really didn't pan out at all for them. But he has the opportunity, not only this year because he is franchise tagged, to really go out there and prove it again, but if he goes out and proves it, how the contract situation works out for him and the Bengals, comparing it to Justin Jefferson, resetting the market like we just talked about, he could go out and prove it again this year and then get paid a lot and really establish himself as one of the best, maybe on a different team. I think it's probably the most likely route for him. And then after that, you don't really have too many options to look at for the Cincinnati Bengals, which is why, that depth is the biggest question with them. Mike Gesicki comes over from the Miami Dolphins, so you have something a little bit there that you can work with from that tight end position. And it is weird just because, they don't have too much quantity, but they might get the most looks just because Joe Mixon isn't there. He moves on to the Houston Texans, and now Maybe the Bengals decide to throw it a lot more to get the ball in the hands of Jamar Chase a lot more, in the hands of T. Higgins. So they might get the most flattering stat lines compared to the other three teams. So again, it all depends on how these teams are built, what personnel you have at each position. It's not like they don't want to do that. They have two number one wide receivers. They have the luxury of doing that. Two guys that are versatile enough to do it all. And I think they're the most talented ones probably in this AFC North division. So they're my number one ranked team. And at that point, with Joe Burrow coming back, it puts him in a great spot to compete against the highest teams in the AFC, to have one of the better seasons in their recent history. Maybe go back to the Super Bowl like they did in 2022. But that's my list. Bengals top it off. The Steelers come in fourth. The Ravens are in third. And the Cleveland Browns come in at the number 2 overall spot in my rankings. Let me know what you guys think about these rankings. Did I get them wrong? Why did I get them wrong? Leave it all in the live chat box or in the comments section after this episode is finalized. But in saying that, we'll move on to the rest of the show. Like I mentioned before, some factors that go into the CBA that could be renegotiated between the NFL and the NFLPA in the coming seasons, about off-season structures, maybe revenue splits, and also an 18-game regular season. All those are discussion points in the pending negotiations between these two parties. Also, how the kickoff rule will impact kickers in 2024 will also be discussed in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.